Welcome back to this training session. I hope that you enjoyed the last one regarding how to create an API for the API designer. On this one, we are going to learn how to create an API, but instead of using the API designer, we are going to use the API factory. In the first step, we are going to create an API using the SAP wizard. Then, on the second step, we are going to test the API on the cockpit. And on the final step, we are going to consume the API that we have created on the application that we previously create. Remember to use APIs due to the fact that it's easier to reutilize the same API across several applications without duplicating the code. Let's jump into the cockpit to have a quick overview on what we did on the last e-learning. So, on the previous session, we have created my first API on the API designer with one operation. On this session, we are going to create a similar API, but in this case for the API factory. If you want to deepen your knowledge about the API factory, you can jump into our community, check the documentation, and in there, under the SAP documentation, you have an extended documentation about the API factory. It's possible to read how to create an API using a wizard or even create them manually. So let's jump into the SAP and start the transaction /Neptune/AF_wizard and press the enter. If you got the error message saying that the transaction doesn't exist, don't forget to put the /n before the transaction. Now the dialog for the wizard appears. On this first screen, we are able to see a short description about the wizard. Let's press continue and jump to the second screen. On this screen, we have two radio buttons that give us the possibility to choose the easy or the advanced mode. For the intention of this e-learning, we are going to stick with the easy one. The advanced one will be featured on the expert level. The only thing that we need to do on this screen is to enter the name of the class that we want to create. So let's call it ZCL_my_first_API_factory. Let's go on to the third page. This one, it's an optional one, so we are going to skip this one. In the expert level e-learning, we are going to detail more about this one. So let's go on to the fourth page. It's in this one that we create the endpoints. The endpoints are the same as the operations. Let's create the first one, call it get_Mara. During the creation, the underscore is removed, as we can see on the description. On the operations, we have all of the CRUD methods and also some additional things. Let's use the get in this case. Let's put something on the description, get Mara. Let's go on to the next page. In this one, we can specify a different name for the interface. For the purpose of this e-learning, let's keep it like this. Let's go on to the final page and complete the wizard. Now we need to choose the package where we want to save the class. In this case, I'm going to use the temporary one. Now that we have created the class, we just need to activate. As we can see, in the interfaces, we have three interfaces provided by Neptune, and the fourth one that it's the one that we name. Let's jump into the cockpit to have a quick look to see if the API is there and how it's showing. As you can see, we have the API created. On the policies we don't have any. Let's check the Swagger. As you can see, we have an error. This is due to the fact that on the policies the unrestricted API engine is set to no. Let's switch this to yes. Let's switch to the Swagger, and as you can see, we no longer have the error. The API is also showing that no operation was implemented. This is due to the fact that we didn't implement any code on the class. So let's jump into the Eclipse and start implementing the method. So first thing first, we need to open the class. Then we need to choose the method that we want to implement and navigate to the definition inside the interface. It's in there that we are going to specify the table that we want to export. Let's start by creating the type containing only two fields, material number and material type. Then we need to create a table type based on the type that we have created. And in the final step, we need to go to the method getMara and specify an exporting parameter. Let's name it global table Mara, and the type is going to be the table type that we have created. Let's activate and go back into our class. Now we can start coding the select. Let's do a select star from Mara into corresponding fields of table, global table underscore Mara. This is the one that we have created on the interface on the exporting parameter. And we only want to fetch 20 rows. Let's activate everything and jump into the cockpit to test the API. We need to press on the get to expand this operation, and afterwards we need to press on the button try it out and then press the execute. And as we can see on the response body, we have 20 materials and 20 material types. So now we can jump into the application designer and start changing the previously created application to receive the response from this API. Let's open the My First API. We need to change it to edit mode, and as you can see on the APIs, we are not able to choose this API. And the main reason for that is due to the fact that the API factory normally is used to create dynamically APIs that are used to connect to other systems like the Open Edition. But this doesn't mean that we cannot use them inside the SAP edition. We just need to do in a different way. And this is done by coding. So first thing first, let's grab a script file, and in there let's go to the code snippets and retrieve the code for the init event. Let's remove the code that we don't need, and the easiest way to get the code that we need to do, it's by running this application in a separated window, opening the developer tools and retrieve the code for the API that we already have in place. Let's search for Ajax and let's continuing search until we find the one for the API. And as you can see, this is the one that it's updating the model of our list. So let's copy the code, switch back to the application and pass the code on our script file. And let's start removing some things that are no longer needed, like the header and the variable for the URL. Let's put some commas because we are putting a string in the URL. Let's also comment the code that is updating the model at this moment. To get the correct URL, we can jump into the cockpit and retrieve the URL from the previous test that we did on the Swagger. Let's copy the URL and jump back into the app designer and pass the URL between the commas. We also need to put debugger on the response from the API in order just to double check how the structure of the response table. Let's also jump into the REST API and remove the online from the set initial load. Let's jump into the other tab just to check how the data is retrieved. So let's refresh, and we can see that we have a variable called data with a second one called result inside, and in there we can see our global table Mara containing all the results. Let's jump back into the app designer and update the model of the list with our table. But the model of the list contains many more fields than the ones on our table. This will not cause any problem because the fields that we are binding are named exactly the same way. Let's uncomment the line that we previously commented and remove also the debugger and activate the application. As we can see, we have our 20 lines. If you intend to use this in your application, please pay attention to the URL. If you deploy these to production systems or for test systems, you need to adjust the URL according to the system. You may need to create some type of mechanism to adjust this URL. You can use a relative path to minimize the adjustments on the URL, but this is not possible on a mobile device. If you use a relative path on a mobile device, you are going to have a fail on the AJAX call because a relative path on a mobile device is going to be translated to a file on the file system, and this is going to cause the error. And with this we conclude this training session. I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.